Episode 1. She wasn't supposed to pray that night. They told her never to enter the chapel after midnight. Not because of demons, not because of thieves, but because the statue of the Virgin wasn't playing after dark. And yet, at 12:03 a.m., Elena knelt alone under the cold gaze of stone eyes that hadn't moved in over 100 years. Her mother used to pray here. Her grandmother died here. And when Elena's sister stopped speaking after the fire, this was the only place left that didn't feel like death. So she prayed, but it wasn't the kind of prayer you say with folded hands. It came from her teeth, clenched and raw. It came from her spine, arched with fury. It came from her blood, whispering truths that no church had room for. If you are real, then open her mouth again. Let her speak, or I swear, I'll burn this holy place down myself. The candlelight trembled. The Virgin's eyes didn't move. Not yet, but something cracked. Not wood, not stone. Time. The air grew thick, like wet cloth over her face. The candles bowed, and in the silence, there was something else. Not a sound, a presence, a pressure in the soul. Then came the weeping. It didn't come from Elena. It didn't come from her sister. It came from the altar, from the statue, from Mary herself. And when Elena looked up, her prayer still bitter in her throat. She saw it. The statue had opened its eyes, and the eyes were not made of stone. They were human, brown, wet, blinking on safe white, slowly, like waking from centuries of silence. And as they opened, so did something else. The floor beneath the altar split, like a mouth yearning. Black smoke poured out, not sulfur, not fire, but memories, screams without sound, names without owners. And a single rosary fell from the Virgin's hand, rattling across the marble toward Elena. She didn't dare touch it, because the eyes were now locked on her, and the lips of the statue moved. You shouldn't have asked. The candles died, and something stepped into the chapel that had never prayed, never wept, and had been waiting for a voice just like Elena's to break the seal. Episode 2. The church sealed its records, but Elena's sister spoke the next morning. They found her sister standing at the window, barefoot, whispering in a voice that didn't belong to her. Not anymore. The same girl who hadn't spoken a single word since the fire, nor repeating prayers in perfect Latin. Prayers she had never learned. Prayers no one had taught her. Domini, libera nos evangelis mortuorum. Lord, free us from the chains of the dead. The nurse dropped the glass of water. The old priest crossed himself. And Elena, she ran. Back to the chapel, back to the place where her words had broken the silence of centuries. But the statue was no longer there. Only ash, a perfect ring of black soot where it once stood, and burned into the altar, carved like flesh peeled from stone. Word for words. The first seal breaks. Elena fell to her knees, not to pray, but to beg whatever had answered her to take it back. But prayers, once heard, echo forever. And now the town whispered things they hadn't dared for generations. How the statue had wept blood in 1872. How the fire that took her grandmother began at the altar and stopped at her sister's, crib untouched. How the church kept a book, locked in iron, beneath the confessional, a book that only opened when someone prayed without faith. And Elena had screamed her prayer into God's face. That night, the ground around the chapel began to crack. Fresh, roots black, pulsing grew up through the marble. The air smelled like incense soaked in rot, and the crucifix above the altar tilted left, just slightly, like something underneath had tucked it. Then the nightmares began, not dreams, visitations. Each night, Elena woke with her sister standing at the foot of her bed, eyes glazed, whispering names, ancient names, some human, some not. I saw him, her sister said one night, voice dry as dust. He's not in heaven anymore. And when Elena asked who, her sister simply wept, not like a child, but like a mother mourning the death of light. The diocese sent investigators. They sealed the church. They confiscated the altar cloths. They took the tapes from the court V. But when they tried to review the footage from midnight, all they saw was a girl praying, and the moment her head lifted, the screen went black. Not glitching, not static, just eyes, two human eyes, blinking slowly, and the sound of something breathing through stone. Episode 3. The book beneath the confessional wasn't supposed to open, but it did. The priest's hands trembled as he unlocked the floor panel beneath the confessional. He had never touched the iron trapdoor before. It was older than the church itself, forged without hinges, sealed with wax and scripture. It wasn't meant to be openly buried, but something had changed. The bishop's voice had come through the phone, sharp and shaken. "Open the vault. Father Reyes, if the girl's prayer cracked the seal, we need to know which page turned." "Which page?" As if the book chose. The trapdoor gave a final groan, and the air that escaped smelled of candle soot and raw meat. Beneath it, a box, wrapped in chains, marked with a single word etched in Latin, TACRE, to be silent, but the silence had already been broken. Reyes pressed his crucifix to the lock. It hissed. The chains fell, and when he opened the box, he did not find a book. He found a mouth. Not metaphor, a mouth, where the spine of the book should have been. Lips, teeth, tongue, breathing, and it spoke. "You heard her prayer. It rasped. Now read what was promised." The pages were parchment, but warm and wet. They pulsed beneath his fingertips like veins. The first page was blank. The second, not in ink, but blood, written in circles, spinning, writhing, script that should not exist. And in the center, carved so deeply it nearly tore through, "The offering has been tasted." The eye opens. Reyes stepped back. The book slammed shut, and all the candles in the confessional turned black. Not out, black, like light had been swallowed. That night, Elena woke from her sleep coughing dirt. Her pillow was covered in soil, and beneath it, pressed flat like a pressed flower, was a page torn from the book. A new page, still wet, still warm, and it bore her name, not in ink, in nail marks. The next morning, the bishop who had ordered the vault opened was found hanging upside down in the cathedral, mouth filled with rosary beads. His eyes were wide open, but not from fear, from prayer. A prayer answered. Episode 4. The choir started singing at midnight, but there was no one in the church. The first time it happened, the sacristan thought it was the wind. The second time, he locked the church doors himself. The third time, he ran and never returned, because no one, not even the oldest priest, could explain why the choir loft, sealed for decades, echoed with sacred voices at exactly 12 a.m. Not footsteps, not whispers, but full, perfect harmony. Voices in Latin, notes that hovered in the air like fog, sung by no one, seen by no one, yet they rattled the stained glass and stirred the ashes in the incense bowls. The hymns weren't the ones from the Sunday liturgy. They were older, darker, hungrier, and somewhere within the melody, if you listened closely, there was something beneath the harmony. A name, Elena. She heard it through her window, faint, distant, like a lullaby bleeding through the wind. The same night, her sister began humming again, the exact tune from the loft. "Why are you singing that?" Elena asked, trembling. Her sister looked up, eyes clouded, and smiled. "Because he's almost here, at that church." Father Reyes lit every candle. He poured holy water in every corner. He placed relics under each pew. But the moment the clock struck 12, the candles bent. The flame didn't flicker, it bowed, as if something had entered. Then the singing began. He climbed the stairs to the loft, crucifix tight in hand, breath tight in lungs. But when he reached the top, he saw it. Not people, shadows, down scenes of them, cloaked in robes. No faces, only mouths wide open, but no bodies casting them. And in the center of the loft, the Virgin's statue returned, but her eyes no longer looked up to heaven. She looked directly at him, and her lips parted. She sang. Her voice wasn't stone. It was a woman's voice, low, ancient, tender, and terrifying. "You broke the silence, priest," she sang. "Now echo must be fed." Reyes dropped the crucifix. It shattered. The singing stopped, but something behind him kept humming. He turned. No one, but on the wall, drawn in ash, was the outline of a choir boy. Small, head bowed, hands open, and the phrase written above in blood, "We never left." That night, Elena dreamed she was kneeling in the choir loft, but every voice was her own, hundreds of herself, singing the same song, over and over, a prayer that grew louder with each echo, until one voice broke from the harmony and whispered in her ear, "If you don't finish what you started, they'll make her sing forever." Episode 5. The girl in the painting moved her lips, and then the fires returned. There was a painting in the church hallway that no one looked at twice. A faded oil portrait of a nameless child in white, holding a candle that had long since vanished beneath dust and smoke. No one knew who she was. No plaque, no record, just a face and silence. Until that morning, until Father Reyes walked past her on his way to bless the confessional, and saw her lips part, not wide, not sudden, just enough to whisper, and the moment she moved, the candle in her hand reappeared. Lit, burning, real. He blinked, once, twice, but the flame didn't vanish. It flickered, and the child in the painting, she smiled. Then the alarms went off. Smoke, from beneath the altar. Again, Elena woke choking, her room thick with the scent of burning wood and wet stone. Her hands were stained with ash, but she hadn't left her bed. She ran to her sister's room. Empty, but on the wall above the bed, in dark streaks of soot, one flame for each unanswered prayer, and beside it, a print, not a hand, a footprint, small, bare, still warm, back at the church. The fire didn't spread like a natural blaze. It moved with intention. The pews weren't touched. The roof remained intact. But every biblical patch was gone, reduced to ash, except for one verse still burning in the air. And their mouths shall speak what angels dare not whisper. Unknown book, verse 1-1. The fire inspectors couldn't explain it, because the origin of the blaze wasn't electric. It wasn't chemical. It came from behind the girl's painting. They removed the frame, and behind it, another painting, arid, altar, twisted, the same girl, but this time, her candle was a tongue, a flame, and painted in the background blurred, almost invisible was Elena's sister, mouth sewn shut, eyes bleeding, hands reaching out from inside the canvas. That night, the choir sang again, but this time, the voices were different. They weren't in Latin, they were in Elena's own voice, repeating the same words over and over. Take it back, take it back, take it back. And then the candle in the painting flickered once more, but this time, in a room, in the corner, hung on her wall since childhood, the same faceless painting, now with eyes watching her, lips moving again, and this time, she understood. You opened the prayer, it whispered, now burn the amen, or she will. Episode 6. A second statue was found buried beneath the church, and it was smiling. They were digging to repair the foundation scorched by the fire, but what they found wasn't part of the church. It was beneath it, 6 feet below the altar, sealed in stone, wrapped in red silk, mouth stuffed with pages from a burnt hymnal. They found a second statue of the Virgin Mary, but unlike the one that cried and blinked, this one smiled, and the smile wasn't divine. It was mocking, sharp, almost human. The workers refused to lift it. One vomited at the sight of its eyes painted black, not blue. Another began coughing blood and whispered, "She's dreaming, don't wake her." Father Reyes ordered the site sealed, but it was too late. That night, the church bells rang by themselves 13 times. There is no 13th chime. There never was. Yet the sound echoed through town, turning milk sour, cracking mirrors, and waking Elena's sister who had moved all day. She stood in the doorway, hair soaked, hands trembling, eyes rolled wide. "It's not a statue," she whispered. "It's her mouth." Elena returned to the church the next morning. The air was heavier now, not humid, not thick, alive. She stepped near the hole and felt her own name throb in her ears. And then, she saw it just above the statue's lips. A mark. No, a stain. Dark, familiar, almost oily, ash and milk, and carved into the base in a language she did not know, but could somehow read. "You prayed to break silence. I smite to unmake God." Later that evening, Father Reyes opened the ancient book again. This time, the page turned by itself. Fresh blood, still dripping, a drawing of the smiling statue, and beneath it, the phrase, "The second seal smiles." He slammed it shut, breathing hard, but the book began to hum, and then it laughed. That night, children across town woke screaming, not from nightmares, from psalms. All of them sang in their sleep, all of them the same verse. She smiled before Eden. She smiles after the fall. And when her mouth is open, there will be no God at all. And when Elena opened her closet the next morning, The rosary that once fell from the statue's hand was hanging there, still wet, still red, and wrapped tightly around a photograph of her sister. Only, now, her sister's eyes were missing, and in place of her mouth, a smile carved in ink. Episode 7. The confession booth was empty, but someone was screaming inside. The screams didn't echo. They vibrated, low and guttural, like someone crying through a mouth full of nails. And they were coming from inside the confessional. But when Father Reyes opened the curtain, there was no one there, only the scent of burnt fabric, and a pool of wax still warm seeping from the seat where penitents once knelt. He called for help, but the other priests were already gone. Most had left after the fires. The rest stopped sleeping after the statue smiled. Reyes knelt, trembling, and placed his hand near the wax. It pulsed like a heartbeat and carved into the wood of the booth, in tiny, desperate scratches. "Forgive me, Father, for I spoke the wrong prayer." That same night, Elena heard the screams too, but not in the church. In her own home, from her sister's room, she ran in, empty, but the air was different, thicker, like incense soaked in breath, and her sister's mirror was shattered from the inside out. One shard was still twitching on the floor, and reflected in it no one stood above us, a cloaked figure, sitting in the confessional, face covered, but lips moving fast, faster, like they weren't praying, but confessing everything at once. And from the floor beneath the mirror rose the same phrase again. The third seal cracks. Elena couldn't breathe, not from fear, but because her mouth wouldn't open. She tried to scream, nothing, not silence, a vacuum, like the sound had been stolen from her throat. She stumbled out of the room, calling at her lips, and in the hallway, on the wallpaper that once held holy pictures of saints, was now an image scorched into the plaster. The confessional booth split in two, and inside it, not a person, a mouth, open wide, screaming endlessly. Back at the church, Reyes returned to the booth after midnight. This time, he brought the book, and as he opened it, the pages flipped violently, like a wind no one else could feel. A name bled across the paper, Elena's sister, chosen, and under it, confession must be reversed, or heaven must be rewritten. Then came the knock, 3 soft knocks from inside the booth. He opened the curtain, still no one, but the wax had hardened, and inside a frowning mid-screen was a tongue. Human, small, burned black at the tip. He dropped it, and as it hit the floor, the other curtain opened by itself, and from the empty seat opposite him, a voice whispered, "You prayed for truth, but truth doesn't kneel." That night, Elena's sister drew something on the wall with her fingers. Not chalk, not paint, blood, a door with no handle, and above it, a sentence written in looping, childish script. "She's not asking to come in, she's waiting for us to open." Episode 8. The door behind the altar wasn't built by human hands, and it just unlocked. The door had always been there, built into the back of the altar, sealed, no keyhole, no hinges. The priest called it the wall of silence, a slab of blackened wood older than the church itself, rumored to be imported from the ruins of a monastery that vanished during the plague. But that morning, Father Reyes found it was open, just slightly, just enough to breathe, and from inside came the smell of roses. Dead ones? He didn't tell anyone. He simply stood before it, crucifix tight in his fist, heart a drum inside a coffin, and he remembered what the book had said the night before. When the third seal cracks, the fourth will breathe through the wood that was never carved. So he reached out, and the moment his fingers touched the edge of blood, not a cut, a puncture, as if the door had bitten him, and from within, something sighed. That same night, Elena's sister began drawing doors again. Hundreds, on every wall, every surface, all identical, tall, rounded, no handles. But one thing changed. Each door had a name, not hers, Elena's, and beneath each, a word written in dripping red chalk. Invited. Elena returned to the church. She didn't know why, only that she had to. The choir had stopped singing. The painting of the girl had burned overnight. The confessional booth was now boarded shut with nails that bent from the inside. And the altar was cold, stone, still, but the door behind it was now fully open, and it was breathing. She heard it slow and rhythmic, like lungs older than the sky. And just before she called out, a shadow stepped from the threshold. Not walked, stepped, like it had always belonged. It looked like her sister, but taller, and its eyes were wrong. Too many, too deep. And when it opened its mouth, Elena heard not a voice, but every prayer she had ever said, backwards, spoken in reverse. She ran, but behind her, she heard it whisper, "You opened the prayer, now open the door in you." That night, Father Reyes found a message in the book, written in ash, still warm. The fourth seal breathes. The prayer is almost a body, and beneath it, a sketch of Elena, arms open, mouth sewn shut, and a door growing from her spine. Episode 9, Elena found the door in her own body, and something was knocking from the inside. It began with the itch, just between her shoulder, played a small, persistent, then it spread, a dull pressure that throbbed like breath under skin, as if something was waiting, not on her, but within her. By morning, it wasn't an itch anymore, it was pulsating. Elena stood in the mirror and lifted her shirt, and there it was, a line, not a bruise, not a scar, a thin, dark slit vertical tracing down her spine. It looked like skin trying to hide something, something shaped like a door, and as she stared, her breath caught, because it moved, knocked, from the inside, went, twice, and then her reflection smiled, but she hadn't. She screamed. Her sister came running, but instead of fear, her eyes filled with something else, recognition. "They gave you the fifth," she whispered. Elena shook her head. "What do you mean?" Her sister pointed at the slit. "That's where he'll step through. That's where the prayer is becoming him. Back at the church." Father Reyes ripped pages from the book, desperate for answers, but each page turned into mirrors, not paper mirrors, and each one reflected a different version of Elena. In one, her skin was made of stone. In another, her eyes were missing, and in the last, she was kneeling, lips sewn shut, and from her back, a door was wide open, with something climbing through. It didn't walk, it slid, boneless, endless, mouth first. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the chapel, but not as it was, as it would become. Hues melted into bone, the Virgin statue crying not blood but teeth, and the altar was no longer stone. It was her body, bent backwards, the door in her spine wide open, and the congregation, hundreds of herselves, praying to what came out. She woke up clawing her back. Blood. The slit had grown. It now reached her lower back, and around the edges, flesh was cracking, not breaking, opening, and taped to her ceiling without explanation was a single page from the book. It read, "The fifth seal walks with her. She is no longer the prayer. She is the altar." Downstairs, her sister was humming again, a slow, broken lullaby, and when Elena asked what it meant, her sister only said, "He's almost ready to step through." Episode 10. The Mass began at 3 a.m., but everyone in the church was already dead. The bells rang, 3 soft chimes. At 3 a.m., not noon, not Sunday, no one had pulled the rope. The tower had been sealed since the second fire, and yet the bells rang, clear and solemn, the call to Mass. But when Father Reyes arrived at the church, the doors were already open, the candles were lit, the incense was burning, and the pews were full, every seat occupied. Men, women, children, dressed in black, faces forward, silent, still, too still. He moved down the center aisle, heart pounding. He recognized some of the people who'd stopped coming months ago, people who'd fled the town, people who'd died, all of them, back. But their eyes were wrong, not empty, not glazed, sealed shut, as if the act of seeing had been revoked. And a doctor standing tall, hands folded, lips curved in a smile. Elena, her spine arched unnaturally beneath her dress, as if barely containing what was inside, and from the back of her neck to her waist, the skin was no longer skin. It was hinged. The door was almost fully formed, and it throbbed with every breath. Reyes stepped forward. "Elena," he whispered, "don't do this." She opened her eyes, slowly, sadly. "I'm not leading the Mass," she said. "I'm the church now. It's already begun." Then came the voices, not hers, not the congregation's, but from beneath the floorboards, down scenes. hundreds, all praying at once, not to God, but to what's next. The ground shook, the candles bent inward, and from the stained glass above, the Virgin's image melted, tears of molten color dripping into the pews like blood and oil. And then, the bodies began to rot, not slowly, all at once. The congregation collapsed, skin curling in, eyes liquefying, tongues turning to salt, but none of them screamed, because none of them had mouths anymore. Their faces were smooth, as if silence itself had sculpted them. Reyes tried to run, but the exit was gone, replaced by wall, flesh-like, and pulsing with the same rhythm as the door in Elena's back. She turned to him, voice calm and final. He's stepping through now, and once he's here, prayer will never be heard again, because prayer belongs to the ones who wait, and he is the one who answers. Suddenly, her spine split open, not with blood, but with light, screaming light, too bright to be holy, too aware to be divine. A hand reached out, long, thin, skinless, and as it touched the altar, the church groaned, as if the building itself was weeping. The fifth seal was no longer walking, it was welcoming. Episode 11. The thing that stepped through her back didn't speak. It just pointed to the sky, and the stars began to go out. It had no name, not one that could be spoken without unraveling the mouth. It was taller than the chapel, but it bent, gently, reverently, to step through the door in Elena's back. No bones, no skin, only shape, and where a face should have been, there was nothing but a spiral, turning inward, always inward. It did not roar, it did not speak. It pointed, one long, trembling finger, toward the stained glass ceiling, toward the heavens, toward God. At that very moment, a child screamed 3 towns away, not from pain, from darkness. She pointed at the sky and cried, "The stars are falling asleep." And when her father looked up, he saw it too. A slow, methodical dimming, one by one, the stars were going out, not fading, being covered, like something massive had moved between earth and heaven. A shadow with intention, with hunger. Back in the chapel, Elena collapsed. The door in her spine hung open, skin peeled like bark, and the thing that had stepped through her knelt. It didn't worship, it remembered, because it had been here before language, before guilt, before prayer. It placed one hand on the altar and whispered, not aloud, but into the walls. The sixth seal listens. Father Reyes crawled backward. Tears streamed down his face, not from fear, from the sudden silence, complete, brutal absence of sound. His heartbeat, his breath, even the crackling of the candles, gone, like the world had hit pause. And then he understood. The stars were prayers, and this thing, it was the answer, the final one, the one that ended the conversation. Outside, the graveyard began to churn, soil cracked, tombstones tipped, hands emerged, but they did not reach for life. They reached toward the sky, as if begging the stars to stay, but the sky was erasing itself. Elena awoke gasping, the door in her back still open, but empty now. She felt hollow, used, but not broken, because part of her, the part that first screamed the forbidden prayer, was still inside the thing that stepped out, and it was still pointing upward. And she knew, when the last star vanished, he would turn that finger toward them. Father Reyes crawled to the altar. He opened the book one last time. No pages left, only a mirror, and in the mirror, he saw the church, not the real one, but the next one, the one built not of stone, but of flesh, and at its center, Elena, arms stretched like crucifixion, in the congregation, silent mouths, empty eyes, and one star, the last, hanging, flickering, waiting. Episode 12. When the last star went out, the world didn't end, it just forgot who made it. They were all staring at the sky, the whole town, the whole world, maybe, waiting for that last shimmer, the last defiant ember in the black ocean above, to blink and be no more. And then, quietly, it did. No explosion, no trumpet, no collapse, just darkness, a silence so full, it rang, and in that moment, something deep and sacred inside every soul forgot. People stopped moving, not paralyzed, but unmoored, as if someone had erased the idea of why. Clocks still ticked, hearts still beat, but no one remembered what came next. Children stopped crying, lovers stopped holding hands, priests forgot how to cross themselves, and Elena opened her eyes. She was still in the chapel, though it was no longer a chapel. The walls had grown soft, calcine, faint, moist with memory. The pews had melted into rows of kneeling figures, mouths sewn, hands clasped, still breathing but aimless. The stained glass now showed no saints, only one figure, repeated in every pain. But not as she was, as something becoming. The door in her back had closed, but something else had opened. Her eyes now saw backward, not into her past, into the worlds. She saw the first prayer of one whispered before time, before breath, before sin, and it wasn't said by man. It was said to man, by that which walked through her. Father Reyes was there, barely alive, crawling toward her, crucifix in hand, mumbling words no longer heard by any heaven. "You have to stop it," he gasped. "We were wrong. Prayer is not asking, it's letting in." Elena looked down at him, tears falling silently from eyes no longer hers. And for the first time, she spoke not as Elena, but as the altar eternal. There is no stopping, only remembering. She placed her hand on his forehead. His skin peeled, not from pain, but like a mask slitting, and beneath it was not flesh, it was scripture, written in screams. And as he crumbled to ash, the pews rose in one synchronized breath, all the hallowed souls, facing her, waiting, not for forgiveness, not for mercy, but for instruction. Outside, the earth had not ended, but every church bell had vanished, every cross had melted, and every holy book had turned blank. Because now, the world did not remember who to pray to, only her, and above it all, where stars once burned, only blackness, and a single phrase, whispered by the darkness itself. The seventh seal is not broken, because it was never sealed. It was her. Elena closed her eyes, and as the world kneeled, she smiled.